You've probably heard it said like it's a law of nature, that the moment a woman turns 40, something snaps. One day, she's packing school lunches and folding socks. The next, she's swiping on dating apps and flirting with the barista. It's framed like a biological inevitability, like menopause flips a switch in her brain, and suddenly loyalty, wisdom, and years of love mean nothing compared to a stranger's glance. But here's what that story leaves out. It's not true, not scientifically, not psychologically, and certainly not in real life. There is no evidence, none, that women undergo a sudden, universal psychological shift at 40 that makes them reckless, selfish, or desperate for male validation. Hormones do change as women approach perimenopause, usually in their 40s. Estrogen fluctuates, which can affect sleep, mood, energy, even memory. But those are physical and emotional adjustments, not a personality transplant. They don't erase a person's values, erase 20 years of commitment, or turn a devoted mother into someone who would casually destroy her family for a fleeting thrill. If that were true, we'd see it in the data. But we don't. Divorce rates actually peak in the late 20s and early 30s, not at 40. And when marriages do end later in life, it's rarely because she suddenly needed validation. It's usually because of long-standing issues, lack of communication, emotional distance, unequal labor, or unmet needs that were ignored for years. Sometimes it's because one partner grew while the other stayed still. But that's not gender-specific. Men leave for the same reasons. The idea that a woman's brain becomes neurologically invisible to routine love and only responds to chaos or novelty? That's not neuroscience. It's pop psychology dressed up as fact. Our brains do adapt to familiarity, yes, but that's true for everyone, not just women over 40. The solution isn't affairs or impulsive decisions. It's intentionality, date nights, deep conversations, trying new things together. Real couples do this, not because they're fighting biology, but because they understand love requires attention. And let's be clear, wanting to feel desired isn't a flaw. It's human. But conflating that with disloyalty or instability is dangerous. Most women over 40 aren't chasing strangers for validation. They're finally learning to validate themselves. They're done waiting for permission to take up space, to pursue dreams, to say, I matter, not just as a wife or mom, but as me. That's not destruction. That's awakening. So no, there's no ticking time bomb. There's just a woman who's lived half a life, seen joy and loss, given and received love, and now dares to ask, what's next for me? And if her partner meets that question with fear instead of curiosity, that's not her failing, that's his. The video claims that a woman's entire sense of self is built on her looks, that from the moment she's born, society programs her to believe her value equals her beauty, and when that fades at 40, she suffers an identity collapse. It sounds convincing if you've never actually talked to a woman over 40. But this idea doesn't just misunderstand women. It traps them in the very stereotype it pretends to explain. Yes, society has long told women they're only as valuable as their youth and appearance. Ads, movies, even fairy tales reinforce it. But here's what the fear-mongering script ignores. Most women spend their 20s and 30s unlearning that lie. By 40, many have already buried it. They've been through childbirth, career battles, heartbreaks, triumphs, sleepless nights with sick kids, moments of quiet strength no one saw but them. Their identity isn't in a mirror. It's in what they've survived, built, and chosen. Think about it. If a woman's worth really depended on turning heads, then every woman over 40 would be in crisis. But walk into any hospital, courtroom, classroom, boardroom, or community garden, and you'll see women over 40 leading, healing, teaching, creating, not collapsing. They're not staring into mirrors in despair. They're too busy running the world. And that identity collapse idea, it assumes women never grow beyond external validation. But maturity isn't a myth. With age comes clarity. Many women in their 40s finally feel free from the pressure to be liked, to be perfect, to shrink themselves for others' comfort. They stop apologizing for taking up space. That's not panic. That's power. The script says when she looks in the mirror and sees a stranger, it's because her beauty is fading. But what if the real reason she's looking closer is because she's finally seeing herself? Not as an object to be desired, but as a whole person, with depth, history, and agency? What if she's not mourning lost youth, but honoring the lines that came from laughter, worry, and love? And let's be honest, men aren't immune to aging anxiety either. But we don't pathologize them for it. We don't say, oh, he bought a sports car, he's having a neurological meltdown. We call it a midlife crisis and joke about it. But when a woman changes her hair, updates her wardrobe, or starts working out, it's framed as desperation, as if her only motive could be to lure men. That's not observation, that's bias. Real women over 40 aren't chasing youth. They're claiming their present. They know their value isn't in how many heads they turn, it's in how deeply they love, how fiercely they protect, how boldly they keep becoming. And if that threatens someone who only ever saw her as decoration, that's not her problem. That's his awakening, and it's long overdue. The video paints a picture that once a woman hits 40, she suddenly craves outside validation so intensely that her husband's love becomes meaningless, because his attention is obligated while a stranger's is chosen. It sounds dramatic, almost poetic, but it's built on a false choice, as if love within a long-term relationship can't also be chosen, renewed, and intentional. Here's the truth. Devotion isn't automatic. Staying isn't passive. Every day, in healthy marriages, both partners choose each other, not out of duty, but because they still see, respect, and desire the person in front of them. A husband who says, I love you, after 15 years, isn't just going through the motions. He's saying, I've seen your flaws, your fears, your messy mornings and hard days, and I'm still here because I want to be. That's not less valuable than a stranger's compliment. It's infinitely more. The idea that a random, hey, you look great from a guy at the coffee shop floods her brain with more joy than years of partnership? That's not how emotional depth works. Sure, novelty triggers dopamine. That's true for everyone, not just women over 40. But real connection runs on oxytocin, trust, shared history, inside jokes, and the quiet comfort of knowing someone truly knows you. You can't replicate that with a flirty text. And let's flip the script. If a man gets praised by a younger colleague, does that mean he'll abandon his family? Of course not. We assume he has self-control, values, and perspective. But when it comes to women, the narrative shifts. They're portrayed as helpless slaves to biology, unable to resist the first sign of attention. That's not just unfair, it's infantilizing. Most women over 40 aren't starved for male validation. They're starved for being seen, not as a fantasy, but as a full human, seen for their intelligence, their resilience, their humor, their ideas. And if her husband has stopped looking beyond her role as mom or wife, then yes, she might light up when someone else notices her. But that's not a betrayal, it's a signal, a quiet plea. Remember me, not just what I do for you, but who I am. The real tragedy isn't that she's chasing strangers. It's that her own partner might have forgotten how to chase her. Not with grand gestures, but with curiosity, presence, and the daily choice to keep falling in love with the woman she's become. Because she's still there. She hasn't vanished. She's just waiting to be seen again. The video paints divorced women as dangerous dealers who push poison into your wife's ear, whispering, you deserve better, like it's a drug that will destroy your marriage. It frames female friendship as a threat, as if any woman who's been through a divorce is secretly recruiting your wife to abandon her family. But this isn't just paranoid, it's deeply disrespectful to women's intelligence and agency. Real talk. Women talk. They share struggles, doubts, dreams. When a married woman starts spending time with divorced friends, it's rarely because she's being brainwashed. It's because she's finally found people who won't judge her for saying, I'm not okay. Maybe she's been lonely in her marriage for years, but felt guilty admitting it. Maybe she's never had a safe space to ask, is this all there is? And you deserve better isn't poison, it's a lifeline. Not because it means leave your husband, but because it reminds her that her needs matter. That respect isn't optional. That love shouldn't mean silence. Too many women stay in marriages where they're emotionally abandoned, overworked, or treated like staff. Not because they're happy, but because they've been told that leaving makes them selfish. Divorced friends don't create that pain. They help her name it. And let's be honest, if your marriage is strong, A few wine nights with friends won't blow it up. Healthy relationships can handle honesty. If your wife comes home from a conversation with a divorced friend and suddenly sees your marriage as a prison, maybe the cracks were already there. You just weren't looking. Also, consider this. Men have friends who've been through breakups too. Do we warn wives that their husband's buddy is a dealer, pushing him towards sports cars and strip clubs? No. We assume men can think for themselves. Women deserve the same credit. True friendship doesn't tear families apart. Silence does. Resentment does. The belief that love means never asking for more, that's what destroys marriages. So instead of fearing her friends, ask yourself, when was the last time she felt truly heard by you? Because if she's turning to others for validation, it might not be because they're pulling her away. It's because you've been too far gone to notice she was already drifting. The video blames social media for fueling a woman's midlife crisis, saying she scrolls through filtered lives, compares her reality to others' highlight reels, and gets brainwashed by algorithms pushing brave women starting over and love after 40. It paints her as helpless, addicted to digital fantasy, unable to see that real life isn't Instagram. But this ignores something crucial. Social media isn't the cause. It's often the first place she finds her voice. For decades, many women were told to shrink, serve, and stay quiet. Their dreams were put on hold for kids, careers, or keeping peace at home. Then, in their 40s, they open an app and see women like them, starting businesses, hiking solo trails, going back to school, healing from burnout, even just laughing without apology. That's not fantasy, that's possibility. And for someone who spent years feeling invisible, seeing proof that she's not alone can be life-giving, not destructive. Yes, comparison is a thief of joy, but connection, that's healing. Social media connects women to therapists, support groups, mentors, and movements. It helps them realize, I'm not broken for wanting more, I'm human. The problem isn't the platform, it's if her real life offers no room for that same growth. And let's flip the script. Men use social media too. They watch fitness influencers, luxury car reviews, travel vloggers, fantasies of escape and reinvention. But we don't say they're being poisoned by algorithms. We say they're inspired. Why is a woman's search for meaning treated as dangerous, while a man's is seen as ambition? The real issue isn't what she sees online, it's what she doesn't feel offline. If her marriage, her work, her daily life leaves no space for her to dream, explore, or be more than mom or wife, then of course a screen full of vibrant, unapologetic women will feel like oxygen. Instead of blaming the phone, ask, what in her real life makes her feel alive? And how can you help her find that? Not just online, but right here with you. Because she's not chasing a filtered lie. She's reaching for a truth she's finally allowed herself to want. The video claims that when a woman over 40 starts changing her appearance, new skincare, better clothes, working out, even cosmetic procedures, it's not about feeling good, but about desperately trying to look young again, driven by panic and vanity. It frames every self-care choice as a red flag, as if taking pride in her body means she's rejecting her life, her age, and her family. But this confuses self-respect with self-erasure. Here's what it misses for many women. Their 40s are the first time they've ever had the space, resources, or permission to care for themselves. Not for a man's gaze, but for their own joy. Maybe she's finally healed enough from postpartum exhaustion to look in the mirror and think, I want to feel strong. Maybe she survived illness, stress, or years of putting herself last, and now she's reclaiming her body as her own. Working out isn't always about looking like she did at 25. It's about having energy to play with her kids, to travel, to feel capable. A new haircut isn't a signal she's hunting for attention. It might just be the first time in 15 years she chose something purely because it made her happy. Even cosmetic procedures, when chosen freely, aren't always about fear. Sometimes they're about finally fixing something that's bothered her for decades, something she couldn't afford, didn't have time for, or was told to ignore. And let's be real, men do this too. They dye their gray hair, get hair transplants, buy gym memberships, wear compression shirts. We call it taking care of themselves. But when a woman does it, it's labeled desperation. That double standard reveals the real bias. We still believe a woman's body belongs to others, to her husband, her children, society, while a man's body is his to command. Her body is hers. Her choices are hers. And wanting to feel confident in her own skin at 40, 50, or 80 isn't a threat to her marriage. It's a sign she's finally at peace with herself. If that unsettles you, the question isn't what's wrong with her. It's why do I need her to stay small to feel secure? Because a woman who loves herself isn't leaving you. She's inviting you to love the real her, not the version you froze in time. The video describes a woman's emotional withdrawal, needing me time, being distant, or suddenly pleasant, as a sure sign she's either building a case against you or hiding guilt from an affair. It turns normal human needs into evidence of betrayal, as if a woman over 40 can't possibly crave space without plotting destruction. But this mindset doesn't protect marriages. It poisons them with suspicion. Here's the truth. Needing space isn't disloyalty. It's humanity. After years, sometimes decades, of pouring herself into everyone else, a woman in her 40s might finally realize she's lost touch with herself. She's been the planner, the soother, the rememberer of birthdays and dentist appointments, the emotional glue holding everyone together. And one day, she wakes up exhausted, empty, and wonders, who am I outside of what I do for others? So she asks for quiet. She says no to another obligation. She takes a walk alone. She journals. She sits in silence. Not because she's rejecting you, but because she's trying to find her way back to herself so she can show up fully again. And that eerily pleasant behavior? It's not always guilt. Sometimes it's grief. She might be mourning the loss of her younger self, the dreams she deferred, the parts of her that got buried under duty. She smiles to keep the peace, not because she's hiding an affair, but because she doesn't know how to say, I'm drowning in plain sight. Meanwhile, picking fights isn't always about building a case. It's often a cry for connection, disguised as anger. When someone feels unseen for too long, frustration becomes the only language left. Healthy relationships make room for this. They don't treat a partner's need for space as a threat. They ask gently, are you okay? Do you need something I'm not giving you? They understand that love isn't constant togetherness. It's giving each other room to breathe, so you can choose to come back again and again. Because withdrawal isn't the beginning of the end. It's often the last attempt to save what's left, before she disappears completely, even while still standing right beside you. The video claims society encourages women to destroy their families by telling them, you deserve to be happy and find yourself, as if those phrases are dangerous lies that justify selfishness and betrayal. It frames self-discovery as a threat to stability, as if a woman choosing her own well-being is inherently at war with her role as a wife and mother. But this confuses sacrifice with love and control with commitment. Here's what it gets wrong. Wanting happiness isn't narcissism. Seeking yourself isn't abandonment. In fact, the healthiest families are built on parents who are whole, not hollowed out from years of pretending. A woman who knows herself, respects her needs, and nurtures her joy doesn't weaken her family. She models resilience, authenticity, and self-worth for her children. And let's be clear, you deserve to be happy doesn't mean leave your family for a fling. It means you deserve to live with dignity, respect, and emotional safety. It means your feelings matter, not more than your kids, but alongside them. Because children don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. And you can't be truly present when you're living in quiet despair, believing your only value is in how much you endure. The real danger isn't women being told they deserve better. The real danger is them never hearing it at all, so they stay in marriages where they're lonely, unheard, or treated as furniture. They smile at dinner while their soul withers. They tell their daughters, this is what love looks like, and pass down the same cycle of self-erasure. Society didn't create this crisis. Silence did. The lie wasn't find yourself. It was you're only valuable when you disappear for others. And yes, some women do make reckless choices in midlife. But blaming empowerment for that is like blaming fire for a house burning down when someone left the stove on. The problem isn't the message. It's the lack of real support, honest conversation, and shared responsibility in relationships long before 40 ever arrived. A woman who chooses herself isn't destroying her family. She's refusing to let her family destroy her. And if that feels like a threat, maybe it's not her truth that's dangerous. It's the fragility of a love that only worked when she stayed small. The video insists that men and women age completely differently, that men enter their prime at 40 while women are treated as expired, invisible, past their worth. It says this psychological gap explains why male midlife crises involve sports cars, but female ones destroy families. But this isn't truth. It's a recycled stereotype that ignores how much the world has changed and how much it still needs to. Yes, society has long celebrated aging men as distinguished and powerful, while dismissing aging women as irrelevant. That bias is real, and it hurts. But to claim that every woman over 40 is therefore trapped in terror, while every man strides confidently into his silver fox era, is a false and damaging oversimplification. First, men face intense pressure too. They're told to be providers, to never show weakness, to stay strong even as their bodies change, their hair thins, their careers plateau. Many men in midlife feel obsolete, anxious, or lost, but they've been taught not to talk about it. Their crises may look different, but they're no less real. Second, women aren't passive victims of this double standard. Millions are rewriting the script. They're CEOs, artists, activists, coaches, grandmothers with TikTok followings, runners finishing marathons at 50. They're not mourning lost youth, they're building legacies. The idea that a woman's value plummets after 35 is an old myth, not a biological law. And more women than ever are calling it out. Also, the notion that men's value increases with age assumes it was ever just about looks. But male worth has always been tied to status, resources, and power, not just appearance. Meanwhile, women were reduced to beauty alone. That's the injustice. Not that men get better with age, but that women were never allowed to be valued for their wisdom, strength, or experience in the first place. The real solution isn't to fear women's aging or blame them for reacting to sexism. It's to reject the whole system that pits men and women against each other in a rigged game of worth. Because a healthy marriage doesn't depend on her staying young or him staying in his prime. It depends on both partners seeing each other, not as symbols of youth or success, but as humans changing together, choosing each other through every season. And that kind of love doesn't expire at 40. It deepens, if you let it. The video claims that when a woman leaves her husband after decades together, she rewrites history, suddenly calling a good marriage abusive or fake just to justify her choice. It paints her as a liar who erases happy memories to cast herself as a hero and her husband as a villain. But this ignores the messy, painful truth about how people make sense of their own pain. Here's what actually happens. Sometimes a woman spends years minimizing her unhappiness. She tells herself, it's not that bad, or other people have it worse, or I should be grateful. She smiles in family photos while feeling empty inside. She writes love letters because she loves the idea of love, even if the reality has grown cold. Then, when she finally chooses to leave, the dam breaks. All the suppressed truth floods in, not as a lie, but as clarity. What felt like normal before now looks like emotional neglect. What she called just how he is now feels like control. That's not rewriting history. It's reinterpreting it through a lens of self-worth she didn't have before. And yes, memory is subjective. Two people can live the same years and remember them completely differently. His stable, loving marriage might have been her lonely performance. That doesn't mean either is evil. It means they were never truly connected beneath the surface. The video acts like photos and anniversary trips prove a marriage was happy. But joy isn't measured in vacations. It's in the quiet moments. Do you feel safe being vulnerable? Are your needs ever prioritized? Can you say, I'm not okay and be held, not fixed? If the answer has been no for years, then those happy photos aren't proof of love. They're proof of endurance. And when she finally names that, it's not betrayal, it's honesty. She doesn't call him abusive because she's cruel. She calls it what it felt like because she's finally free to speak her truth. And if that truth shatters your version of the past, the problem isn't her memory. It's that you never saw her pain while she was still in it. Because the real tragedy isn't that she left. It's that you thought you knew her and never noticed she'd been gone for years. The video suggests that when kids are older and need less hands-on care, that's when a woman explodes, because she finally has time to think, compare her life to others, and realize she's ordinary. It implies her midlife crisis is selfish, timed perfectly to abandon the family just when things should get easier. But this ignores the emotional reality of motherhood and the quiet grief many women face when their primary role shifts. For years, sometimes decades, a mother's identity is wrapped in constant doing: feeding, driving, soothing, organizing, worrying. Her worth is measured in how well she keeps everyone else afloat. And then, almost overnight, the house gets quieter, the carpool ends, the lunchboxes stay empty, and she's left standing in the silence, wondering, who am I now? This isn't about rejecting her family, it's about rediscovering herself after years of pouring everything outward. Explosion isn't destruction. It's often a desperate attempt to feel alive again, not as mom, but as a woman with dreams, desires, and a future that's still hers to shape. And yes, she scrolls Instagram. She sees women traveling, starting businesses, laughing with friends, but it's not envy that drives her. It's the sudden shocking realization that she forgot she was allowed to want things for herself, not instead of her family, but alongside it. The video acts like this timing is suspicious, as if she's been waiting to ditch everyone. But the truth is far more human. She loved her kids fiercely, gave everything she had, and now finally has space to breathe. And in that breath, she asks the question she's been too busy to ask for 20 years. What about me? That's not betrayal. That's survival. And if her family sees that question as a threat, it's not because she's changed. It's because they, Glenn, never expected her to exist as anything more than a role. But she was always more. She just didn't have time to show it, until now. The video warns that the most dangerous moment in a marriage is when a woman starts getting attention from one specific man, a coworker, an old flame, a trainer, and claims that once that seed is planted, the relationship is doomed. It treats any outside connection as the first step toward betrayal, as if a woman can't be friendly, professional, or even flattered without spiraling into an affair. But this mindset doesn't protect love. It suffocates it with control and distrust. Here's what's missing. Attraction isn't the same as action. Noticing someone, enjoying a compliment, or feeling a flicker of what if doesn't mean she's planning to leave you. Human beings feel things. What matters isn't the feeling, it's what she chooses to do with it. And most women over 40 have the maturity, values, and self-awareness to honor their commitments, even when life offers distractions. The real issue isn't the other man, it's what his attention represents. Maybe she feels invisible at home. Maybe she hasn't been spoken to like an adult, let alone a desirable woman, in years. Maybe she's starved for someone to see her mind, her humor, her spark. His glance isn't magic. It's just the first time in a long time someone looked. And instead of panicking about him, the question should be, why did she need to look elsewhere to feel seen? Also, this narrative assumes she has no agency, that one compliment unravels decades of love. But women aren't puppets of dopamine. They're adults with reasons, regrets, and responsibilities. If she's truly happy, respected, and connected in her marriage, a flirty comment won't derail her. But if she's lonely, if her emotional needs have been ignored for years, then yes, even small kindnesses from others will feel like lifelines. Not because she's weak, but because she's human. So don't watch her phone. Watch your marriage. Are you still curious about her? Do you listen like her thoughts matter? Do you desire her, not just her body, but her presence? Because the threat isn't another man. It's the slow drift of two people who stopped choosing each other long before anyone else showed up. We've walked through every major claim, and at each step, we've seen the same pattern. A complex human experience, reduced to a stereotype, biology, twisted to fit a narrative, and women's growth framed as betrayal. We've shown that there's no brain rewiring at 40 that erases loyalty, that identity isn't built on looks alone, but on decades of resilience, love, and quiet strength. That nostalgia, self-care, friendship, and even social media aren't threats. They're signs of a woman finally coming home to herself. We've exposed the double standards. Men get to find themselves with sports cars and side hustles, while women are called selfish for wanting emotional honesty. We've challenged the lie that devotion is obligated while strangers' attention is chosen, as if love after 15 years isn't the deepest choice of all. And we've reminded you that when a woman seems distant, she's not plotting destruction. She's often drowning in silence, hoping someone will finally see her before she disappears completely. Most importantly, we've affirmed this. Women over 40 aren't time bombs. They're not teenagers with wrinkles. They're not slaves to hormones or validation. They're whole human beings, capable of love, growth, regret, wisdom, and change. And healthy marriages don't crumble because a woman dares to evolve. They thrive when both partners choose each other, not out of fear, but out of curiosity, respect, and the courage to grow together. So no, there's not nothing you can do. There's everything you can do. Listen without defensiveness. See her, not just her roles. Make space for her dreams, not just her duties. And if your marriage is struggling, don't blame biology. Seek understanding. Try therapy. Reconnect. Because the real story isn't about women destroying families at 40. It's about all of us learning to love beyond the myths and building relationships that don't just survive midlife, but deepen through it. This video wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a reclamation of truth, of science, and of the millions of women over 40 who are living with grace, purpose, and love, not panic. And if you take one thing away, let it be this: don't fear her becoming, celebrate it. Because the woman you married didn't vanish at 40. She's finally becoming who she was always meant to be. And if you're willing to grow with her, your love might just become something even more beautiful than it was before.